Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3. Chapter 1, text 31. Chemam sakachchid yudana aste yapalguna labda danurahasya leben jasadok saja sevayaiva Gatim tariyam yatibir durapam Chimam sakachchit yudhana aste Yapalguna labda danurahasya Leben jasadok saja sevayaiva Gatim tariyam yatibir durapam Chemam, all good. Sa, he, kachchit, whether, yudana, satyaki, aste, is there. Ya, one who, Falgunat, from Arjuna, Labda, has achieved. Danu Rahasya, one who understands the intricacies of military art. Lebe, also achieved. Anjasa, easily. Adhoksaja, of the transcendence. Sevaya, by service. Eva, certainly. Gatim, destination. Tadiyam, transcendental. Yatibi, by great renounces. Durapam, very difficult to achieve. Translation. O Uddhava does Yuyadhana farewell. He learned the intricacies of the military art from Arjuna and attained the transcendental destination which is very difficult to reach even for great renounces. Purport. The destination of transcendence is to become the personal associate of the personality of Godhead, who is known as Adhoksaja, he who is beyond the reach of the senses. The renouncers of the world, the sannyasis, give up all worldly connections, namely family, wife, children, friends, home, wealth, everything, to attain the transcendental bliss of Brahman happiness. But Adhoksaja happiness is beyond Brahman happiness. The empiric philosophers enjoy a transcendental quality of bliss by philosophical speculation on the supreme truth, but beyond that pleasure is the pleasure enjoyed by Brahman in his eternal form of the personality of Godhead. Brahman bliss is enjoyed by living entities after liberation from material bondage, but Parabrahman, the personality of Godhead, enjoys eternally a bliss of his own potency, which is called the Ladini potency. The empiric philosopher who studies Brahman by negation of the external features has not yet learned the quality of the Ladini potency of Brahman. Out of many potencies of the omnipotent, there are three features of his internal potency, namely Samvit, Sandini and Ladini. And in spite of their strict adherence to the principles of Yama, Niyama, Asana, Dhyana, Dharana and Pranayama, the great yogis and jnanis are unable to enter into the internal potency of the Lord. This internal potency, however, is easily realized by the devotees of the Lord by dint of devotional service. Yudhana achieved this stage of life just as he achieved expert knowledge in military science from Arjuna. Thus his life was successful to the fullest extent from both the material and spiritual angles of vision, that is the way of devotional service to the Lord. Chimam sakachit yudan aste yafalguna labda danura hasya lebin jasad hoksaja sevayaiva katim tadiyam yati bidurapam. Translation again. O Uddhava does Yudhana a farewell. He learned the intricacies of the military art from Arjuna and attained the transcendental destination, which is very difficult to reach even for great renouncers. So, description here of the various associates and family members of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We've been reading through in the last few verses especially, where Vidura is questioning Uddhava and he's asking how all these different individuals, these persons, what's their situation? How are they? Just like anyone would normally do when you meet an old acquaintance and you ask how the family is doing, how your old friends are doing. But of course this is quite a bit different because this is the Lord's family. So there's ordinary relationships which are based on life in the material world, and then there's transcendental relationships which are in the spiritual world, and also from time to time they manifest in this material world. Yesterday it was mentioned in the purport by Prabhupada that all these devotees who appeared in the Lord's family, they're either the plenary expansions of the Lord who have accompanied him directly from the Vaikuntha or the Krishna Loka, or they're the demigods. And actually, when Lord Brahma went and he prayed to originally to Lord Vishnu, the Lord, to save the situation on earth, as far as the Asuras had taken birth, and then the Lord had informed him that, yes, I will come, I will bring my associates, and you demigods should also take birth to assist me in my mission. So now we're reading about some of those associates. We're reading about Pradyumna and Samba, and of course Uddhava and so on, Vasudeva, so on. Now we're reading about Yuyudhana. Yuyudhana, also known as Satyaki. Satyaki, of course, these different names. Satyaki is a personality in the Lord's family. The Vrishni dynasty, the Yadu dynasty, they were all living there in Mathura. They had moved all over to Dwarka. These dynasties are named after ancient kings like King Yadu, and King Vrishni was another one. So the dynasty Vrishni was more recent, and Yadu was more in the past. So they're known in that way, the Yadu dynasty and the Vrishni dynasty, and there was Surasena, there's Ugrasena, the side of on the maternal side and then there's Surasena on Vasudev's side. And so all this it's a big it's a huge family, huge family going back through different lines like that. And now we're getting to Satyaki. I know him more as Satyaki. And as I said, these names, Satyaki, because he is the son of King Satyaka and the grandson of Sini. And Yuyudhana refers to, he is especially warrior. Yuyudhana means he's expert in the military art. So he's sometimes referred to as a Yuyudhana and sometimes referred to as Satyaki. So the Vidura is asking, how is Satyaki? He's asking, how is Pradyumna, how is Samba, how is everyone? And as I said, as an ordinary person might ask that question. But of course, these are the transcendental associates, whether they've come as direct expansions and incarnations, appeared along with the Lord from the spiritual world, or they're demigods. Nevertheless, they can birth in the Lord's family, so they're very, very extra special, very special person, and they're not ordinary personalities. Very, very extra special personalities, really not of this mundane earth, but beyond. Now, I've read that Satyaki is an incarnation of one of the Maruts, who are assistants of Vayu, the wind god, and so he's taken his birth. So these are very, as I said, very extraordinary personalities. And Satyaki, very famous as Satyaki, he went, especially in the Kurukshetra. Now, Satyaki, there's a nice description of Satyaki in Mahabharata and other shastras, that he is very, very handsome, and very noble, a great prince, and also he learnt, as mentioned, he learnt a military art from Arjuna, who he regarded as his guru in that area. There's a description, he's very expert with a sword, and he's also very expert in archery, and he had divine weapons also, very, very powerful, very, very strong. He learnt that, and he's actually a cousin of Krishna. quite similar looking. He had dark features, quite similar looking to Krishna, a little bit different, and he's a cousin of Krishna. Now, when the time of the Battle of Kurukshetra came about, if you remember, when both Arjuna and Duryodhana had gone to see Krishna in Dwarka in regard to the war, and Duryodhana arrived first, but the Lord was resting, and then Arjuna arrived, and then when the Lord awoke, he greeted them both, and then he asked Arjuna what he wanted and why he had come. And of course, Duryodhana protested that, no, I was here first. And because both of them knew why they were there. I was here first, so you have to ask me first. No, that may be the case, Krishna said, but when I woke, I saw Arjuna first. So then I'm asking. But if one thing, he said, if you've come to ask my assistance in the battle, the upcoming war, then I will not fight. But my army can fight. So you have to pick. Either you can pick my assistance directly or my army's assistance. So I'll ask Arjuna first. So of course Arjuna, being the great friend and devotee of Krishna, he picked Krishna. Krishna, if you're just with us, it doesn't matter any army. If you're with us, then I'm very blessed. So he picked Krishna. And Duryodhana he was very, the description in Mahabharata is very nice. He was very, very happy. He was in glee that Arjuna had made this monumental mistake. Because Duryodhana was very, he was very a calculating person. And so he was thinking that, he didn't verbalise it, but he was thinking it, practically couldn't contain his glee that he had made such a mistake like that, now I've got the army and he's got one man, Krishna, whoever he is, but I've got the whole army. So he chose the army, so he was in ecstasy. And then when he came back to Hastinapur, he reported to Shakuni. Shakuni was kind of happy, but actually it's mentioned, he said, well, you did all right, but somehow or other you weren't diplomatic and you should have got Krishna and the army. You only got the army. So he thought that there might be trouble because Krishna wasn't on their side. So Shakuni was a little bit more savvy, a little bit more savvy. So he thought, well, all right, you did good, but he was still a bit concerned about Krishna on the other side. So there, but what happened was, so all the army went over, and but Satyaki, he decided, he made a stand, even though Krishna may have said that, I'm not going, he was in the army, of course. And, there's a famous battle between Satyaki and Kritavarma, who both, survived the war and, of course, went back to Dwarka. And later on they fought at Prabhash in that, when there was the curse there, that all the Yadavas and the Vrishni, they were all being killed, and so Satyaki and Kritavarma fought off with each other later on. But so Satyaki ended up going on the Pandavas' side with Krishna. So he was very principled, even though the army went with Duryodhana, and everyone else, including Kritavarma, are very famous personalities. Though they didn't like it, they were duty bound to go over to Duryodhana and fight for the Duryodhana and for the Kauravas. And then Satyaki, he chose the Pandavas. He chose to be with Krishna. He was very attached to Krishna. He had so much affection for Krishna, more than he would ever. Although he disagreed with Krishna at one point when it was decided, at the last minute with the Pandavas, who was going to, what to do when Sanjaya was sent as an emissary of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. Krishna had decided to go one more time. So Satyaki disagreed with that. He didn't think Krishna should go one more time. And he said, no, the lines are drawn. We have to fight immediately. And actually he accompanied Krishna when he went there as an emissary, on behalf of the Pandavas. He went into the court. So Satyaki's, there's a very transcendental personality, but interestingly, as I said, all these personalities, they're not ordinary, here we're finding that Vidura, he understands very well. I'm not talking about just, how's John doing, or how's Steve doing, or how's Betty doing. I'm asking about the transcendental family of the Supreme Personality of God. And therefore he adds, he learned the intricacies of military art. Well, that might be an ordinary person, admittedly very powerful. He learned the intricacies of military art. And he adds that he attained the transcendental destination, which is very difficult to reach even for great renouncers. So he's not only expert in that area. Now, Prabhupada comments right at the end of the purport, very interestingly, that his life, that Satyaki's life, or Yuyodhana's life, was successful to the fullest extent. Now, it could be called successful just on the spiritual side. That's, he was taking birth, he was participating in the Leela, the different Leelas of Krishna, while Krishna was on earth. He had come, a demigod come to assist the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, he had attained the full perfection, the full success to the fullest extent, spiritually speaking. Now, also is mentioned that on materially speaking also he attained the perfection. I mean, he was in a big family, royal order, in the family of Krishna, in a family of great kings. He learned military science from Arjuna. So we find that both spiritually and materially they were very successful. And we see, amongst devotees today that their lives are successful both materially and spiritually. Just like I was talking to Sri Prahlad some time ago, I said, Sri Prahlad, you're a very special devotee. Your life spiritually is very wonderful. You're such a nice devotee, serving since your childhood in Krishna consciousness. And also materially, you went back to school, you went through the Gurukul system, you went to university, you've got your PhD, you've got a very prestigious position as a professor teaching. I think he's in Cyprus, he's in London now. He's in London. And he's teaching, he was in Sydney there, teaching at Sydney Tech University, and very prestigious. He had everything materially, very handsome man. He didn't like to hear all this, but I said, you've got it all, those things that are considered to be very auspicious materially. Great family, very handsome, knowledgeable, all these different things you've got on that side, and spiritually you've got all those other things. So both spiritually and materially. So here's just one example, and he was very embarrassed I was speaking like that. I said, you've got both sides. You're revered spiritually and you're revered materially. And so Prabhupada actually says here that that is the way of devotional service to the Lord. Someone can be blessed like that. And so Krishna awards spiritual blessings and benefits, and he awards material blessings and benefits. They can be manifest in different ways. Sometimes, of course, Krishna takes away things. If someone gets something, or Krishna may not decide to award that, seeing something in that devotee, who knows what the reason. Sometimes he awards, sometimes he takes away. But both sides. So his life, Satyaki was in the same situation. Imagine taking birth in Krishna's family. Now this is very, very difficult to achieve. This word adhoksaja is used here. It means beyond the perception, beyond the reach of the senses. To be in Krishna's family like that, to be one of the members. Admittedly, there are a lot of them, but still, just to be there. And Satyaki's position, he would have regular contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how good is that? How good is that? I mean, in the world, we see people, we see groups of people And we very much attracted to this particular group of people. And we sometimes wish that we were part of that group, but somehow or other that group is very hard to attain. You can't get in there. It's a kind of some sort of club over there. You know? Only the beautiful people can go in there or something. Only the rich people can go in there. You know, all these rich people hanging out. You know, just like you travel around the world, you see all these rich areas, all the rich people living here, these huge houses, they're very rich. You see them driving around in the big cars, and they're kind of very beautiful, and sometimes you think, oh, I wish I could be one of those. Why can't I be one of those? But you know, it's a very, you know, closed off community. You can wish, but actually be there is another thing. To be there and to be able to associate with the Rockefellers and then this and that and the other, that's a whole other thing. You look from the distance. But to go inside is difficult. It's difficult. And here, Prabhupada makes a point that he talks about the big renouncers of the world, the big sannyasis. They're trying to attain Brahman realization. They renounce everything to try to attain the supreme perfection of spiritual existence. But Prabhupada comments, they haven't actually reached the supreme, they've reached a perfection in Brahman realization. And I was just reading this narrative that was sent to all the GBCs in regard to the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. They just sent out their narrative as far as their exhibits and what they're going to show there, and they wanted some comments. And so I just noticed in one section there, they talk about the different levels beyond, you know, there's the material world, and then there's the layers of earth and water, and then beyond there's Devi Dham, there's Mahesh Dham, and there's Hari Dham, you know, beyond the layers. And they talk about Mahesh Dham, giving descriptions from the different shastras. In Mahesh Dham, that is the abode of Lord Shiva, that can be a destination of the renouncers of the world who want to attain Brahman. Now, there's two impersonalist schools. One's the voidists, and one's the those they want to attain, one with the void, one with the more or less the darkness of the void of the world, the void beyond the world. That's one type of, and then the other one, they want to attain the light, the Brahman, the effulgence. So that Brahman effulgence, now in that Mahesh Dham is mentioned there, in that section there, that's where the abode of Lord Shiva, there's Sadashiva Loka, which is effulgent, that which manifests the Brahman. The impersonal can achieve that level there in Mahadeva Dham, or they can achieve the level beyond the Viraj River in the Vaikuntha, which is permeated by Brahman. Now that was interesting. And there's a section in Mahesh Dham, which is called Mahakala. It's a section that is a void section, a darkness section. That is the destination of the voidists. They can go there. I was reading through a very long document, about 150 pages, but when I got to that section, I just noted, and I kind of vaguely remembered reading it many years ago, but then jogged my memory, that description, and that so the impersonal, they can attain Brahman realization there, at the effulgence in the Shiva Loka, the Mahesh Dham, or the voidists, they can attain the other section, which is a certain section kept for them. So they can go there, but they can't go to the Hari Dham to reach the utmost perfection. So it's very, very difficult to attain, to come into the personal association of the Supreme Personality of God. It's Sri Krishna especially, and what to speak of Lord Narayan in the Vaikuntha. Very, very difficult. So either those who renounce, those who are the yogis, those who are the philosophers, the jnanis, the yogis. Here Prabhupada comments about, yes, well, one can, follow very strictly the yama, niyama, and asana, dhyana, dharana, pranayama, all these things, and elevate themselves to a very high level. But to actually come into the level of being a personal associate of the Lord, that is not attainable by these methods. It's not attainable by those methods, even though they may spend many lifetimes practicing these procedures, and it's difficult. You've got to be really focused and follow all the different processes and so on. And so Prabhupada makes a comment here that and commenting on what Vidura is saying in regard to Satyaki. He is so fortunate, he's got the material side, he's got the spiritual side to be in the association. That is the supreme perfection. So very difficult to achieve. A rarefied type of position. I remember many years ago when we were travelling around, and I had a bus and we would travel around, and all us brahmachari, we were putting programs, and we were right up north. And we went to, we were going to put on a feast at Cedar Bay. Cedar Bay in those days was where all the hippies congregated. It was a national park, and you could camp out there, and no one bothered you. But to get in there, it was kind of like not so easy to get in there. Very beautiful in Cedar Bay, in a bay, very beautiful. And to get in there was very, very difficult. So we decided, well, we wouldn't go there. We would do some chanting and put on a big feast. But you couldn't drive in there. You had to actually trek in there. So we went in there and we had all the supply. We were carrying pots and pans and this and that, and all the boga and everything, carrying them in, right? And so we'll put on a big feast for everyone out there. So we went in there, but we didn't know exactly. We were kind of trying to figure it out how to get in there. So then we got to a point and we got lost. So some of us were saying, no, it's this way. We have to go this way. And the other ones said, no, you've got to go this way. And then there was an argument, no, this way. All right, well, half of us will go this way and the other half will go that way, right? So I kid you not, 8 hours later, after going through my section, we were climbing over, rock peaks and things to get in there. And we came back, and we finally got to the sand area on the beach, and we came back in contact with both groups. What are you doing here? And what are you doing here? And we both came in contact with each other at the same time. They described the ordeal of their particular part, going through the stinging vines, and they were all bleeding and all this type of thing. And everyone was just collapsed on the beach, on the sand. And then we saw a couple of guys and their girlfriends just walking past very nonchalantly. And we, where have you come from? Well, we've just come from over there. Where are you going? We're going into Cedar Bay. Where is it? Oh, it's just up here. Well, where did you go? We went over what's called the Gap. And how long did it take you? Oh, we're walking for about an hour. An hour? So they actually found out how to go there from different individuals, from those who lived there. They had found out actually how to go there, and they went that way. You see? So because they actually asked the individuals and they found out, they went there very easily. Very, very easily. So I just tell this story because that's how you do it. You can try to work hard and work it out. I mean, we would have never found it anyway. If we were lying on the beach, we'd more or less given up. We were actually getting ready to get back, and we didn't like the idea of it. Going back the same, we were tossing up whether to go one way what one group went, or the group the other way the other group went. So we were tossing up, all laid out and completely fagged out. And then these three people just came on nonchalantly, all chatting away to each other. We were lying on the beach. Like that, and so then we just followed them in, and it was just a little walk further up, and we came and then just collapsed in there. But finally we got ourselves up and we cooked a big feast and had a big chanting and everything. Had a nice program in there. So it's the same thing. So it can be very easy. So those can attain perfection trying it these very difficult ways. But even then you don't reach the full perfection. And Prabhupada points out here that the full perfection as when you're a personal associate of the personality of Godhead. There's this Samvit, Sandini, Ladini, there's these Shaktis, these energies that cannot be experienced on any other level. You know, well, at least you can experience maybe some existential Sandini, but even then it's not full. It's not full existence, even though you can be in Brahman. So really you're not experiencing the full Sandini, or you're not experiencing, well, you're not experiencing, there may be some pleasure, but it's not really Ladini. Ladini pleasure, which is Ananda, or Sandini, or Samvit, true position, a topmost position of knowledge. So these are the energies that are there on that level of realization and that level of situation when you're with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one is not, that one gets an invitation to come in and follows the instructions how to come into the inner circle, then it'll be successful. And Prabhupada points that out. You know, it's very difficult through these other ways, but this internal potency, however, is easily realized by the devotees of the Lord. You get a special invite in, and then they tell you how to come in. You get into the club. You're in the club now. You can't get in the club. There's no way you can get in the club. But you can get in the club if you get a special invite. And you go in with someone, right? Even though you're not qualified. Just like sometimes, you know, you got a friend who's in the club, and then you're going along, then you're going into the club, and then they're stopped. Wait a minute. Are you a member of this club? Oh, I'm with him. Oh, okay. Then you can come in now, right? You could have been stopped, but you're allowed in because you're with him or her or whoever, right? It's the only way to get in. You can't get in any other way. So this is the secret, open secret for those who want to know it. You know, and Prabhupada, you know, right throughout the Bhagavatam, this thread is always there, how to go into the higher levels to become a personal associate. And it is said actually to fully come to the prema, to the loving affection of the Supreme Lord and his devotees. One needs to go into those paths. And one is actually given a trial period when the Lord comes into this world and does the Leela. One may be a very good devotee, but before they're allowed to go back home, back to Godhead, you're given a tryout. We're going to try you out for a few months. See how you go. Right? Just like, you know, it's just like you do sometimes, you know, when someone comes into, you know, getting a job or something like that. We're a 6 months trial period here. See how you go. See if you fit in. See if you fit in, because you can have all sorts of qualifications. But if your person or your character's a little off, you can be very disruptive to the whole situation. I've asked many people at work, and they say that the bosses at work, you know, especially a big organisation, they're very, you know, when they go through all the candidates, and a lot of this stuff is quite grueling now. I'm told that most of it's done online now. You have to go through all these grueling procedures to when you apply for a job now, isn't it? And you get interviewed, you get asked so many questions, and then they give you a trial period for a while, because they say that someone can be very qualified with all the different academic qualifications or whatever, even work experience, but if they don't fit in, their personality is not right, their character is not right, they can be very disruptive and be detrimental to the whole operation. So therefore, Krishna gives opportunity to devotees, even though they are very elevated, to develop that love more, to fully absorb themselves in that unalloyed position of surrender to the Supreme Personality of God. And he gives great opportunities here. We see he gives these particular demigods opportunities to come into his Leela, as we're reading about here. So Satyaki is one of those personalities. Today also is the disappearance day of Lokanath Goswami, one of the famous Goswamis, originally from, in Bengal, what was now Bangladesh, and he renounced early. He's a renouncer, but he was a great devotee. Now, I read that he is a little bit older than Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, born in 1483, and then he renounced from his birth practically. He was a great devotee, and he met, when he renounced the whole family situation, he went and met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was a good, very interesting description of Lokanath Goswami. You can find yourself. It's the anniversary of his disappearance date, but he got the mercy. He renounced so many things of the world, and he went to Navadvip and met with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who asked him to go and to go to Vrindavan. He instructed him and asked him to go to Vrindavan, and there he spent a long time in Vrindavan Dham. The Lord came and personally gave him a deity, Radha, and you can read that whole Leela. So today I just thought I'd mention is the disappearance anniversary of Lokanath Goswami. Hare Krishna, does anyone have any questions or comments?
Void place in Maheshtam, is that the destination of the Buddhists?
Well, yes. I mean, that's their kind of line of philosophy, isn't it? That the void and the nothingness. And so there's a certain section, this is described, it's called Mahakala, certain section in Maheshtam that's a void and a darkness and a nothingness. So they can go there.
So you mentioned that Satyaki was originally one of the Maruts, I think assistant of Chandra. So he died at the that fratricidal war. Would he go back to that position or back to Godhead? Like all the Devas came down to help Krishna, but do they return to their heavenly planets?
Well, I haven't read specifically about Satyaki, but it's mentioned that they do return, but all the more and more advanced for helping to participate, in the Lord's pastimes. So some of them, it depended on the individual whether they, how much they advanced in their Krishna consciousness. Krishna could have taken them directly back home, back to Godhead, but in general, they return to their positions to continue on in their service to the Supreme Lord. So even Uddhava is mentioned here, which is as one of the Vasus. I find a little surprising now, given his very close relationship with the Lord. But it may be that they're formerly in the spiritual world and they've taken birth as a Vasu and then come down to it may be something like that. So. And Satyaki is maybe in one of those situations, but he's an eternal associate, but he's come, as an assistant, as a Marut, and then he comes into Krishna Lila. Or a partial incarnation has come with the original Satya, it could be one of those combination kind of personalities. So you'd have to read specifically about that individual to understand. But in general, as I said, they do go back to the heavenly abode, the demigods.
Haribol Maharaj, so you talked about Haridam and Maheshtam, but there's also Devi Dam. So I'm still under the impression that Devi is Lord Shiva's eternal consort, that she got her own Dam.
Yeah. Well, she's with Lord Shiva as Parvati, but she's expanded as Durga, and that's the Devi Dam. So she's Durga in the Devi Dhamma. She's Parvati as the now when you read, and they quoted in this narrative also from Brahma Samhita, that when the Lord Mahavishnu, when he impregnates the living entities into this material creation, he first, you can read this in one of the verses of Brahma Samhita, he first of all glances at Rama Devi, which is Lakshmi Devi, Mahalakshmi Devi. He glances at Lakshmi Devi and that impregnates, and she glances at Durga Devi, And so in that way, the living entities come like that. There's actually a staggered sequence of how the living entities come into the world. So Parvati, she's living with Lord Shiva. At her expansion, Durga is living, and she's in the Devi Dham, and she permeates everywhere in the world. Yes.
Maharaj, a technical question if you indulge me. In relation to, you mentioned some Vidla Dini. Now I've heard many times over the years that the living entities, the conditioned soul versus the liberated soul, that there's actually a difference, and the conditioned souls are lacking this some Vidla Dini. They need to obtain this through the mercy of Srimad Bhagavatam to become complete, so to speak, or functioning in the spiritual world.
The condition, the jivas.
Yeah, jivas and the jivas in the world are requiring these two, like a top up, I guess, or.
Well, I don't know what I mean, certainly they're lacking now as conditioned souls, and there's some bit and all the Ladini is not really manifest, and so that has to be bestowed upon them by the Supreme Personality, the love of God, all these potencies that are concomitant factors as far as prema are actually bestowed by the Supreme Personality of God. And so the conditions are certainly lacking. There's a difference between the position of Radharani and even the gopis, and those expansions like Lakshmi and the jivas. They're not jivas. They're other types of personalities. But the ordinary jivas, certainly the lacking, and then Krishna bestows upon and then reawakens and bestows upon the living entities. And so therefore that's needed, that it's mentioned that the living entity, even though become perfect in the sadhana and this and that and the other thing, in their devotional service in this world, still they're lacking. And so the Lord has to give the mercy, and he gives that, bestows upon, allows them to come into the leelas, to perfect them, these positions of these potencies even more.
Just on another matter, I was supposed to remind everyone that tomorrow is the 56th anniversary of the incorporation of ISKCON, and the Maharaj has chosen to speak tomorrow specifically on this.
Mukunda Maharaj.
Yeah.
Mukunda Maharaj is given
I
it.
was told to advertise tomorrow's class.
Normally this is Mukunda Maharaj's day. So Maharaj wanted to speak tomorrow because he was one of the signers on the incorporation, wasn't he? Yeah, so that'll be very nice tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hare.